We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says fighting will not stop until victory. UNSC vote on urgent humanitarian pauses in Gaza further delayed till Friday.
Simple: surrender or die.
Day of mourning declared in Czech Republic after gunman kills 14 in unprecedented attack at Prague University.
It looks like it's something totally unprecedented, and I think everybody's completely shaken.
Indian Navy deploys indigenous guided missile destroyers in Gulf of Aden region in view of recent piracy incident. And in sports, India beats South Africa by 78 runs to seal the ODI series 2-1. Arshdeep Singh took 4 wickets for India. And on to details now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday said that Israel's military operation in Gaza will not stop until it achieves its goals. Netanyahu said Israeli forces would fight until Hamas was destroyed and all remaining hostages taken by Hamas terrorists on October 7th were released.
We are fighting until victory. We'll not stop the war until we achieve all its goals, destroying Hamas and releasing all our hostages. What I suggest for Hamas is very simple: surrender or die. They will not have any other choice. And after we destroy Hamas, I will do everything in my power to ensure that Gaza does not pose a threat to Israel.
Well, Israel's chief military spokesperson has meanwhile said that the military continue to deepen their ground incursion in northern and southern Gaza. Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said an increased number of forces were deployed in eastern Khan Yunis, where fighting was focused on forcing terrorists out of underground tunnels.
We increased the number of combatants in eastern Khan Yunis, and we are operating there with determination with 5 infantry units and broad engineering forces with a focus on underground fighting to remove the terrorists, to wait for them above ground and fight them when they come out, and to get Hamas out of this territory.
And UN Security Council diplomats further delayed until Friday a vote on a resolution to increase humanitarian aid into Gaza. The UN vote was delayed despite the United States saying it can now support an amended proposal that would demand that Israel and Hamas allow the use of all available routes for humanitarian deliveries. An 8-day-long humanitarian pause that started on November 24th helped to increase aid deliveries to Gaza. The pause led to the release of more than 100 hostages held by Hamas since October 7th, and in exchange, 240 Palestinians were freed from Israeli jails. And shifting focus to Russia-Ukraine war, a mass Russian drone attack hit different districts of Kyiv on Thursday night, with Mayor Vitaly Klitschko and other officials reporting strikes on widely separated residential districts. It was the 6th drone attack on the capital this month. At least 2 people were killed. Klitschko said a drone had hit a block of flats in the Solomyansky district in the center of the Ukrainian capital, triggering a fire. Head of Kyiv's military administration, Serhiy Popko, reported fragments from a downed drone and struck an apartment building in Holosilviki district south of the city center. Pictures posted by the Kyiv military administration showed smashed windows and heavy damage to the apartments. Moving on, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Thursday that Ukraine was receiving signals that Russia's military planning and activity was slowing. In this nightly video address, Zelensky said that it was noted in a report issued by the HUR Military Intelligence Directorate.
Today there was a separate report from the HUR Military Intelligence Directorate. The enemy's plans, the work of the Russian defense. there are signals indicating a slowdown. We will continue to support their slowdown.
Україні. Слава.
And the Russian Defense Ministry in a report said that the Russian military had repelled the Ukrainian offensive and attacked many Ukrainian targets, including artillery systems and counter-artillery units. The Russian Air Defense System forces also intercepted many HIMARS rockets and drones from the Ukraine side. And Hungary believes allocating 50 billion euros to Ukraine from within the EU budget over 5 years is a bad decision. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán said on Thursday a sensible timeline should be set for any financing for Ukraine. Speaking at a press conference, Orbán highlighted Hungary's proposal to provide assistance outside the EU budget via a joint loan, but would not approve the use of existing funds. EU leaders plan to revisit the issue at an emergency summit on February 1st. Orbán also denied any Hungarian-Turkish agreement on NATO membership of Sweden. He added the decision lies on the Hungarian parliament, which don't have a great willingness to make this decision. He added.
Ők az ukránoknak adandó pénzt.
I am convinced that to give Ukraine 15 billion euros from the EU budget for 5 years, in which there is no money for this, and by taking out a loan, that's a bad decision. Instead, let's make a good decision, which is the Hungarian proposal. They want to give the money to Ukraine from inside the EU budget. Hungary wants to give it outside the EU budget. They have the possibility, if we don't agree on this, to resolve this outside the budget, but don't have the option of resolving this from the EU budget without Hungarian approval. They have the possibility, 26 members, to resolve this with a joint loan outside the budget. If this comes up, we will consider what we say.
Azonban módosítgatni kezdik a költség.
And Moscow says it is expanding its partnerships in the military and military technical sphere. This was stated by the chief of the Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, on Thursday while addressing foreign military attaches. The official also said the hegemony of the United States and its allies is going to be past, but Washington wants to keep the Western-centric world order at any price. The India correspondent Dasha Chernyshova has more from Moscow.
Despite Western attempts to isolate Moscow on the international arena, Russian Ministry of Defense says it continues to beef up cooperation with foreign partners. The chief of Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, said at a meeting with foreign military attaches on Thursday that Moscow has established, quote, comprehensive interaction with North Korea and is continuing its course of strategic partnership with India and China. He said one of the priorities is to cooperate with overseas armies. Gerasimov accused the West of seeking to create new conflicts in the world, especially in the Balkans, Transnistria, Central Asia and Afghanistan, but also in Asia-Pacific, where he says NATO-like military blocs deteriorate the security situation. He said NATO's activities in Eastern Europe and the accelerated integration of Sweden and Finland into the US defense alliances were negatively affecting the situation in Europe, with prospects for increased confrontation. Speaking of the conflict in Ukraine, Gerasimov said that a hybrid war has been waged by the US and its allies against Russia. He said Kyiv has failed the much-hyped counter-offensive despite the Western support, and noted that the Russian forces are engaged in active defense and constantly expand the zones of control in all directions. Dasha Chernyshova reporting in Moscow for DD India.
And Ukraine, with creditors from the G7 and the Paris Club, signed an agreement on Thursday to extend to March 2027 a debt payment suspension, the Ukrainian Finance Ministry said. The voluntary debt payment suspension is part of $122 billion international support package provided by Ukraine's international partners in the G7. The memorandum of understanding signed by creditors include the governments of Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States. Ukraine's Western government creditors first agreed debt service freeze in September 2022. And over 20 countries have agreed to participate in the new US-led coalition safeguarding commercial traffic in the Red Sea from attack by Yemen's Houthi movement. However, most of the countries who have signed up have declined to be publicly named, that in view of political sensitivities of the operation as regional tensions soar. The United States launched Operation Prosperity Guardian 2 days ago to carry out joint patrols in Red Sea waters near Yemen. The crisis in the Red Sea has grown out of the war between Israel and Gaza's ruling Palestinian Islamist group Hamas. Meanwhile, shipping operators are currently being compromised by the need to avoid the Suez Canal due to the risk of attacks in the Red Sea and restrictions in the Panama Canal following drought. The Panama Canal Authority has, however, said that it has not seen a notable traffic increase due to the situation in the Red Sea, where attacks by Yemen's Houthi group are forcing vessels to divert or switch their transponders off. The hostilities have put a chokehold on the ship passage through the Suez Canal, which handles about 12% of worldwide trade. And now let's get you an update on the headline story we're tracking here at DD India News Hour. Mass shooting at a Prague university on Thursday left 14 people dead, while several others injured in the unprecedented incident. The gunman was also found dead at the shooting site. DD India's Ross Cullen reports from Paris for more.
Well, armed police were deployed to the area in and around the famous Charles University in downtown Prague. It's one of the oldest universities in the world and just a short walk from the landmark Charles Bridge in the centre of the Czech capital. There were videos purportedly showing the gunman dressed in all black and aiming a weapon over the side of a balcony, police confirming that he had been eliminated, in their words, but not before those confirmed fatalities. Other videos showing students sheltering high up on the side of a building on a narrow ledge just underneath a balcony. And there was an email circulated to staff and students at the university, which was seen by the Reuters news agency, urging everyone to shelter in place, stay in your rooms and offices, lock the doors, place furniture in front of the doors and turn the lights off. Other footage showing hundreds of people fleeing the university and thousands running away in the centre of the Czech capital. This is a very busy time of year for Prague, which has lots of festive markets, which are very popular, and that shooting coming just 4 days before Christmas. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
And the Czech Republic has declared a day of mourning across the Central European country for December 23rd to remember the victims of Prague University shooting on Thursday. The decision in this regard was taken after a special cabinet meeting with President Petr Pavel.
We're also asking all citizens of the Czech Republic on December 23rd, the day of national mourning, at 12 noon to pay respect to the victims by holding 1 minute of silence. We have also asked the local officials to facilitate the appropriate steps to commemorate this day of national mourning. We have also asked people to ring the bell at 12 noon across the entire Czech Republic so that through all these actions we could pay respect to the victims.
And the UN Special Representative for Afghanistan has said that the key features of the human rights situation in the country are a record of systematic discrimination against women and girls, repression of political dissent, and torture and ill treatment. Representing his country, Afghan Charge d'Affaires to the United Nations said the lack of progress in resolving human rights issues is a key factor behind the current impasse. In the eastern and southern regions, there has been a dramatic surge in the number of Afghans returning from Pakistan following the government of Pakistan's announced repatriation of illegal foreigners from 1st of November. Since then, more than 450,000 Afghans have returned, over 85% of whom are children and women.
Let us reaffirm our resolve to not merely witness the unfolding tragedy in Afghanistan, but to actively participate in the creation of a just, inclusive, and representative future. A future where every Afghan child can aspire to education, where women participate as equals in society, and where the basic tenets of freedom and human dignity are upheld. The Afghan people deserve no less, and we, as a community of nations, must deliver no less.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Amid China-Philippines conflict, Philippines resolved to protect territorial integrity to contest its rights in the South Asia's China Sea and ignores China's call for rational choice. Holiday season will not be easy for Londoners. Unexpected train strikes and severe winds lead to delay of cancellation. And we tell you about the special visitor at Florida Keys Aquarium encounters.
China and the Philippines have had multiple face-offs in South China Sea. So what is the whole dispute about? Is China a sea bully? I connect the dots to get you the true picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and moving on. Despite China's warning to Philippines to make the rational choice amid the latter's bold moves to contest its rights in South China Sea waters, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos said on Thursday that his government will stand up to coercion in the South China Sea. He said that Philippines will assert its rights in accordance with the Philippine Constitution and international laws, stating that his country's recent moves in the South China were a demonstration of Filipino courage against coercion. President Marcos said the Philippines is firm in its resolve to protect, preserve and uphold its territorial integrity. And Patrick Falk sends us more information on this from Singapore.
The US has repeatedly said it's committed to defending the Philippines, its treaty ally. Notably, though, the Pentagon has said that that treaty agreement does not extend to unsafe operations, including things like the firing of water cannon and collisions, which is what we've basically seen of late in some of these incidents that have taken place between China and the Philippines. Now, also, another thing that's interesting over the last few days is the US has said that it is in communication with China and trying to get military-to-military communications back on track. That was something that President Joe Biden had discussed with President Xi Jinping in California just weeks ago, and the Chinese leader seemed open to that. There is some concern about this having been delayed and why these military-to-military level communications haven't restarted already. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, has said that he's not concerned that the talks haven't restarted yet or communication hasn't restarted. He says it's not a question of when, but he says the bigger question is how the two sides can sustain engagement through ups and downs in the future.
And a reactor at North Korea's Yongbyon nuclear complex appears for the first time to be using atomic fuel, stated the IAEA on Thursday, which would mean the country has a new potential source of plutonium for its nuclear weapons. The IAEA says it has observed a strong outflow of water from the light water reactor's cooling system since October, suggesting ongoing commissioning of the reactor. The IAEA had lost access to North Korea since Pyongyang expelled its inspectors in 2009. Hence, it now observes the country from afar, mainly using satellite imagery. And moving on to updates on U.S. presidential elections, a Biden-Trump rematch in the next-day poll seems increasingly likely. But both men go into the race lacking popularity, so much so that some polls suggest as much as a fifth of the electorate falls into the so-called double haters category, those who are disillusioned by both Biden and Trump. And it's feared these are the voters that could decide the next year's election. Nick Harper reports for more from Washington.
In US politics, two parties dominate: Joe Biden's Democrats and Donald Trump's Republicans. But a growing group of voters are looking for something different.
I declare my independence. I declare my independence.
I declare my independence.
It's that independent spirit and dislike of establishment politics that some outsider candidates are hoping to tap into.
I'm here to declare myself an independent candidate
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nephew of the late former President John F. Kennedy, is running without the backing of a party, as is progressive academic and activist Cornel West.
We got a choice between neo-fascists like Brother Trump or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden.
A bipartisan group known as No Labels is also looking for a high-profile candidate to mount a presidential challenge, all of which could spell trouble for Biden and Trump, pulling votes away from them in what is expected to be a tight race.
There are some lapsed Republicans who don't like Trump, but also maybe don't like Biden and probably disapprove of his job performance. You know, I can imagine some of those folks going into the No Labels camp, and I think this is why Democrats are much more worried about No Labels than Republicans are, because the feeling is that the Republican base is sort of more solid behind Trump.
But to secure votes, these independent candidates first need to get on the ballot in each of the 50 US states. And that requires thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of signatures from supporters. These outsider challengers appear to pose more of a threat to incumbent Joe Biden, but opinions could change in the coming months.
When it comes to the polls ahead of the election, people are much more likely to say that they're considering a third-party candidate and much less likely to vote when election day comes. People get cold feet and they decide at the very end that they don't want to waste their vote.
If all of this wasn't already enough to make getting into the White House practically a mathematical impossibility, there's also the small matter of history. Importantly, an independent candidate has never won in a modern US presidential election. But if they manage to win over just a few thousand disaffected voters in key battleground states, they might do enough to alter the outcome, preventing an establishment Democrat or Republican from winning in November. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
And moving on now, Trump ally Rudy Giuliani filed for bankruptcy on Thursday, days after a jury decided that he must pay more than $148 million to defame two former Georgia election workers. Giuliani filed a petition in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of New York. In the filing, Giuliani said he had between $100 million and $500 million in liabilities and $1 million to $10 million in assets, including $148 million owed to former Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and Wandrea Moss. The filing also listed President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, as a creditor without specifying the amount Giuliani owed him. And the death toll from fire and blast at an oil terminal in Guinea has increased to 23 from 13 earlier, while the number of injured has gone up to 241 from 178, according to a government statement on Thursday. According to the statement, 10 remains were still to be identified, with incoming reports of several missing people. The blast at the West African nation's main oil terminal that handled its fuel imports sparked fears of shortages. The government also mentioned that gasoline distribution was ongoing across the country. Well, people travelling to and fro from British capital are facing serious disruptions at one of the busiest times of the year. Unexpected train strikes and severe winds have led to dozens of journeys being delayed or cancelled, leaving thousands of people struggling to get home for the holidays. DD India's Julia Chapman reports for more from London.
The great Christmas getaway is always frantic in the UK, but this year there is more chaos than usual. Winds of 130 kilometres per hour in parts of the country have knocked trees onto train tracks and brought lines to a standstill. At one of London's main terminals, Euston Station, damaged power lines prevented most trains from coming and going on Thursday afternoon. The strong winds meant that even lines that were running had to run very slowly. An added hurdle emerged when French unions called a surprise strike that meant the Channel Tunnel between the UK and France had to close. That left 24 trains cancelled on the Eurostar line, the high-speed rail link between London and Paris. Some trains even had to turn around and return to their point of departure. Friday is due to be the busiest travel day of the season, with Britons hoping for a smoother journey on their way to friends and family for Christmas. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, traffic on the cross-channel Eurotunnel will gradually resume following an agreement with unions. Eurotunnel has confirmed that a last-minute strike by French workers, which halted trains during the day on Thursday, is over. Eurostar said it would resume a normal timetable out of London, Paris and Brussels on Friday. Also, it will be put on 2 extra trains each day until Christmas Day to help deal with passengers who could not travel on Thursday. The protest over bonus pay caused massive disruptions on the busy London-Paris route during the day-long strike. Some trains had to return to the French capital just before reaching London, prompting the French government to call the industrial action unacceptable. And 5 opposition candidates in the Democratic Republic of Congo have accused the country's Electoral Commission of trying to rig Wednesday's elections and called for a rerun. Authorities at the Electoral Commission have dismissed the allegation and extended voting for a second day in all polling stations that experienced delays on the election day. DD India's correspondent Chris Okamranga has more from Kinshasa.
The Democratic Republic of Congo's elections were marred by delays in many polling stations across the country. Many voters complained of faulty voting machines and missing voters' lists. The head of the DRC's Independent National Electoral Commission announced an extension of the voting for an extra day in all polling stations that experienced the problems. But 5 opposition candidates have rejected the extension and called for fresh polls organized by a new team of electoral officials. They've accused the electoral body of trying to rig the vote in favor of the incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi. The Electoral Commission has denied the allegation. Nearly 44 million people were registered to vote in this year's election. There are fears that the dispute by the opposition figures may trigger protests. The DRC is a top producer of cobalt, a key component used for making rechargeable batteries for electric vehicles. An outbreak of unrest may have far-reaching consequences in Central Africa and the neighboring regions. Chris Ochamringa in Kinshasa for DD India.
Well, a man, Glyn Simmons, has been released from prison in Oklahoma, serving nearly half a century despite being innocent of murder. He's now fighting for compensation with his lawyers, who predict it may take years for him to receive a payout. DD India correspondent Caroline Malone has more on this.
Well, this case is of a person in the US who spent the longest time in jail only to be found innocent. 71-year-old Glyn Simmons was just released in July of this year, and a judge has just found him to be innocent of murder. He was convicted in 1975 when he was just 22 years old. He spent more than 48 years in prison and just got bail a few months ago. He was declared innocent after a review of the case and the evidence by a judge in Oklahoma. They decided that some evidence wasn't given to his defense lawyers that included police reports that had witnesses possibly identifying other subjects. Well, Simmons said after he was released that this has been a lesson in resilience and tenacity, and that nobody should tell you that things like this can't happen, because they really can. Very optimistic for someone that spent, nearly 50 years in jail. He is potentially lined up for compensation, although his lawyers say it could take years and there could be a possible federal lawsuit. He, for the moment, is having to survive off donations, having spent most of his life in jail and not able to make a living for himself. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. France is planning to close its embassy in Niger for an indefinite period as it is unable to carry out diplomatic tasks due to restrictions imposed by the ruling junta following this summer's coup. French President Emmanuel Macron announced that the ambassador and French troops are expected to leave Niger this month. Hundreds of people marked winter solstice sunrise at a Neolithic monument in Newgrange, Country Meath. The tomb is more than 5,000 years old and designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. During the winter solstice, direct sunlight enters the monument through a small opening in the roof and illuminates the chamber for up to 17 minutes. The Berlin Film Festival will honor Martin Scorsese's contribution to cinema with a Lifetime Achievement Award at its 74th iteration next year. Scorsese will be awarded an honorary Golden Bear in the event scheduled on February 20th. With the award, he will join other winners such as Steven Spielberg, Helen Mirren, Ian McKellen and Dustin Hoffman. Parisians and tourists are stocking up on Olympic merchandise for the festive season with T-shirts, hats, wooden toys. Some customers have placed tickets for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games under the Christmas tree, while others prefer memorabilia of the first time Paris hosted the Olympics since 1924. Santa visited the Florida Keys Aquarium Encounters, doling out treats to the residents, including cow nose rays, reef fish and a lobster. Guests can follow Santa's example and feed the fish in the no-feed zone. And still to come on DD India News Hour. J&K terror attack death toll rises to 4 as terrorists laid well-planned ambush in Poonch district and attacked army convoy from hilltop location. India's Tamil Nadu braces for more heavy rain following deadly flash floods. And we'll show you how the preparations for the inauguration of the Ram Temple and the consecration ceremony in Ayodhya are in full swing.
And the Philippines have had multiple face-offs in South China Sea. So what is the whole dispute about? Is China a sea bully? I connect the dots to get you the true picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says fighting will not stop until victory. UNSC vote on urgent humanitarian pauses in Gaza further delayed till Friday. Day of mourning declared in Czech Republic after gunman kills 14 in unprecedented attack at Prague University. Indian Navy deploys indigenous guided missile destroyers in Gulf of Aden region in view of recent piracy incident. And in sports, India beats South Africa by 78 runs to seal the ODI series 2-1. Arshdeep Singh took 4 wickets for India. And moving on, aiming at augmenting the anti-piracy efforts in the Gulf of Aden region, Indian Navy deployed indigenous guided missile destroyer in the region. In a swift response to December 14th incident, the Indian Navy's maritime patrol aircraft deployed to investigate the incident on board a Malta-flagged vessel MV Rian and established communication with all 18 crew members. Concurrently, INS Kochi on anti-piracy patrol was also diverted immediately to render assistance. And India's southern state of Tamil Nadu is expected to witness more downpours after heavy monsoon rains brought deadly flash floods and submerged entire neighborhoods earlier this week. Met Department has forecast further heavy rain in parts of the state from Sunday into Monday. The downpour occurred as the state reels from the aftermath of Cyclone Migjom, which battered Tamil Nadu earlier this month. Indian Navy helicopter flew 7 sorties and airdropped 3.2 tons of relief material in the inaccessible flood-affected areas. The deluge had weakened since December 18th, with conditions improving for rescue crews. India's northeast monsoon usually runs from October to December, bringing heavy rain, particularly to the south. And the death toll in Thursday's terror strike in India's Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir has mounted to 4, with 1 more army personnel succumbing to his injuries. 3 army personnel had attained martyrdom yesterday during an encounter at Surankot in Poonch district of J&K. In the encounter, 2 personnel were also injured. The terrorists had ambushed an army convoy from a hilltop. They attacked the army vehicles, which slowed down at a blind curve. The attack, which appeared to be a well-planned operation, was the 4th major ambush in twin border districts of Rajouri and Poonch this year, in which 20 army soldiers lost their lives. And COVID update now. India asked states and union territories to be on alert and maintain constant vigil amid an uptick in coronavirus cases. The Indian Health Ministry urged people to stay cautious but not to panic. There will be no restrictions on travel at present and no travel advisory will be issued for now. Masks will also not be compulsory yet. In the last 2 weeks, 23 people who have died due to COVID already had serious illness. JN1 variant is a subtype of a subtype. And across India, a transformative movement is gaining momentum. The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, the largest ever outreach initiative of Government of India, is bringing the promise of empowerment and a brighter future to the doorsteps of all Indians. The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra completes 30 days and reaches Mathura in Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The Yatra witnessed enthusiastic participation of locals. It has reached a milestone of over 4 crore participants in less than a month. Youth and women are actively engaged in the campaign, availing direct benefits of the various schemes. And to make air travel a hassle-free experience for passengers, especially during security checks at airports, the Indian government is continuously upgrading the security infrastructure and using advanced digital technologies in the field of civil aviation. Now, Digi Yatra, which provides for seamless and hassle-free experience to passengers at airports using biometric-based identity verification through facial recognition technology, is now available at 13 airports across the country. Using the Digi Yatra app, passengers can simply check into airports even without a boarding pass by looking at security cameras, which identifies individuals based on their Aadhaar card or social security database and allows instant access through security checkpoints. To avail the facility, air travels need to register on the Digi Yatra app. The facility, which is now available at airports including Delhi, Bengaluru, Varanasi, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Pune, will be extended to other cities across India soon in a phased manner. And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. Cold wave tightens grip across North India. Temperature dips in several Indian states. The national capital, Delhi, woke up to a colder morning and dense fog. Meanwhile, the meteorological office has predicted light showers in the plains and fresh snowfall in Jammu and Kashmir. While the minimum temperatures in most parts of North India ranged from 4 to 8 degrees Celsius, it is likely to dip further with rain in the cards. The Zoo Administration in Indian state of Madhya Pradesh has made special arrangements to protect the wild animals from the chilly cold weather. Grass curtains, heaters and bulbs are being used to protect them from winter season. Along with this, curtains are put up so that the warm environment is maintained, and changes are also made in the diet of the animals. The registration of youth on Mera Yuva Bharat, that is My Bharat portal, has crossed 2.2 million. The portal set up by Government of India for the development of youth in the age group of 15 to 29 years. The platform connects youth with programs and learning opportunities in businesses, government departments and non-profit organizations. An 18th Toshali National Crafts Mela in Indian state of Odisha attracts thousands of visitors every day. This annual extravaganza serves as a platform to showcase the rich cultural heritage of India's traditional arts and crafts. Craftsmen from more than 20 states and more than 600 stalls are opened. The preparations for the inauguration of the Ram Temple and the consecration ceremony are in full swing. A fiber-made sun god riding on 7 horses will be installed on the main road of the temple. In Hindu tradition, Surya, the sun god, is often depicted as driving a chariot drawn by 7 horses. The symbolism is associated with the 7 colors of the rainbow and the 7 days of the week. And moving on, India on Thursday said that the matter of death penalty awarded to 8 former Indian Navy personnel by Qatar is being addressed on priority by New Delhi. Speaking to media, India's External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bakshi said the aim is to get those people back home at the earliest.
This case is now in the Court of Appeal, as it's called. And there have been 3 hearings in the Qatar Court of Appeal, on November 23rd, November 30th, and December 7th. Meanwhile, our ambassador in Doha got consular access, mentioned that last time we met, to meet all the 8 men on December 3rd. This is an important issue that we are following, and you know that how we can get our people back to India soon at the earliest. That is what is driving us.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Angola makes a shock announcement of leaving OPEC over disagreement on oil production quotas. Crude prices dipped by more than 1.5% after the announcement. Argentines upset on Milei's economic reforms, who pledged shock therapy for the economy. And European Union's top court comes down heavily on soccer bodies FIFA and UEFA, chiding them for abusing their dominant position by forbidding clubs to compete in a European Super League.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
China and the Philippines have had multiple face-offs in South China Sea. So what is the whole dispute about? Is China a sea bully? I connect the dots to get you the true picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and on to some business news now. Oil prices, which rallied earlier in the week due to concerns about shipping disruption in the Red Sea, fell after Angola announced it is leaving the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. Angolan oil minister said the country's membership in OPEC was not serving its interest. The Saudi-led producer group in recent months has been rallying support to deepen output cuts and boost oil prices. Angola produces around 1.1 million barrels per day, compared with 28 million BPD for the whole group. The country's exit raises questions about the cohesion and direction of OPEC, even though it is one of the smallest producers, and its departure may have a limited impact on global supplies. And U.S. stocks closed higher on Thursday, winning back much of the previous day's losses. Economic data fueled optimism that the Federal Reserve would ease monetary policy and revived investor risk appetite. All three major U.S. stocks posted gains as chips surged, led by Micron Technology after its better-than-expected quarterly forecast, putting the tech-heavy NASDAQ out front. The rally gained momentum as the session drew to a close. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.87%. The S&P 500 gained 1.03%, and the NASDAQ Composite added 1.26%. And thousands of Argentines took to the streets for a second day on Thursday to oppose an emergency presidential decree by new President Javier Milei, protesting against sweeping austerity measures and demanded financial support for the poor. Argentine sovereign debt rose on Thursday and stocks dipped after early gains as market participants cautiously welcomed the decree ending limit on exports and taking other steps to deregulate an ailing economy. The Buenos Aires S&P Marvel Index dipped into negative, while over-the-counter sovereign debt advanced 2.9% after initially climbing as much as 4%. Milei, who has pledged shock therapy to deal with economic malfunctioning, told local media on Thursday the measures were unfriendly but necessary to fix macroeconomic imbalance. The country has been battling recession, triple-digit annual inflation, and a growing poverty rate. And on to sports news now. India defeated South Africa by 78 runs in the third and final ODI of their three-match series in Pearl. The win helped India clinch the series by 2-1. Chasing the set target of 297 runs to win, South Africa were bowled out for 218 in 45.5 overs, despite a knock of 81 runs by Tony De Zorzi. Meanwhile, Arshdeep Singh took 4 wickets for the visitors. Washington Sundar and Avesh Khan scalped 2 dismissals each. The Indian women's hockey team wrapped up their Five Nations Tournament Valencia 2023 campaign with a 2-1 against Ireland. India started the game on the front foot, with Deepika slotting the ball into the back of the net to give India the lead early in the first quarter. Sangeeta Kumari scored in 22 minutes to give India further lead, while captain Catherine Mullen scored the only goal for Ireland. And the European clubs that proposed forming the breakaway league, which sparked widespread protest among angry fans, had been threatened with sanctions by UEFA if they went ahead with the plan, leading to 9 clubs pulling out. A ruling from the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg stated world and European governing bodies, FIFA and UEFA, had abused a dominant position by threatening the Super League clubs and their players with sanctions and exclusion from major competitions. The European Court also said that the rules that demand prior approval for inter-club football projects were unlawful. The court called FIFA and UEFA's rules relating to the exploitation of media rights harmful to clubs, media companies and fans. Within hours, a new European Super League proposal has also been released. And from chart races to boat races, Mark Anthony is now the owner of a new electric raceboat team. Latin Singer has brought Miami Electric Powerboating Team. Team Miami will compete in the first E1 World Championship set to take place in February 2024, where pilots will fly above the water surface behind the wheel of the racebird using innovative hydrofoil technology. E1 currently has 7 powerboating teams, with the Vivid Me Vida Singers team becoming the 8th. And we now take you to Mexico, where the annual Christmas pageant pastorelas are being held with traditional fervor. The pastorelas are essentially an elaborate Christmas play depicting the birth of Jesus Christ, the arrival of the 3 wise men, and the continuous fight between the good and the evil.
Totalmente palmación para decirte, viejita, que llevas camino errado.
Hermanos, de una sola familia, tienen 3 reyes hermosos para ofrecer al Señor los tesoros más preciosos. Sigue nomás a tu fe y a la estrella luminosa, y que ella te...
Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram.